If any kind of knee issues are holding you back from training and performing the way that you want to right now, this video is a must watch for you, because I'm going to deep dive into the one movement pattern that you need to master based on the principles that I'm going to show you in this video if you want to remediate any kind of knee issues, whether you had an ACL surgery a couple years back and your knee just still has never been the same, it's unstable, it doesn't really feel strong, maybe you don't have the right range of motion in it, or maybe you didn't get surgery, maybe you just have patella tendonitis that's bothering you every time you go out and play basketball, or whatever the case is with your knee, whatever issues you have, this is the movement pattern that is going to be absolutely crucial for you to learn. Now, of course, I don't like just selling one exercise or one movement pattern because they're all crucial, right? But this one is the one that I see the most common mistakes on, and that's going to really, really exacerbate any existing knee issues that you have because of the nature of the exercise. So without further ado, I'll get into it. It's the lunge. And you might be asking, but Steph, I've done the lunge hundreds, thousands of times, because I'm sure everybody, probably 99% of you watching this, are high performers. You're really active. You have a training background. So you've done the lunge. So you're asking me this question because it's like, yeah, of course, I've done the lunge. Well, I assure you that you have not done it with the details that I'm about to show you in this video, that in my opinion and what I've seen through working with hundreds of people remediating their pain, specifically their knee pain, with these proper principles, what I've seen is that the closer they find themselves to executing the lunge in this way, the more their pain is significantly reduced, and the more they're able to, because their body is better aligned, because their movement mechanics are more in line with their human design, they also are able to perform better because they move better, they can explode, they can create more force, they can be faster, they can do all of these things because that's already inherently in their body, and we just tapped into it because we improved their movement mechanics and their body alignment. So getting into the lunge, there's going to be a few main points that you're going to need to understand and practice in order to improve your lunge. So the first thing is the back foot. A lot of people don't think about that back foot, but it's really going to set us up in a nice position, and it's going to help us create that full body tension. Whatever exercise you're doing, you want to make sure you're creating tension through the whole entire body, even if you feel like that one area is not the working area or the working muscle, whatever the case may be. You want to make sure you stay nice and solid, connected through the whole chain. That's going to help you become a better mover and improve your mechanics overall. That's a huge principle, is creating that full body tension. So what you're going to do, you're going to set up in this lunge, and really, I don't like to do the lunges where you step forward or even step back, reverse lunges. I don't love those. I do think there's a time and place for those, but I think that just mastering the stationary lunge, or I guess people call this a split squat, I think that's the most fundamental piece. And so with this back leg, what you're going to want to do is, instead of letting this heel really just lower to the ground like this, you're going to want to make sure that you're pushing all the way through that leg, as if you're about to push off to run or just accelerate. That's how you want to feel on that leg. You're feeling fully extended through that hip, through that knee, and through that ankle joint. And you're really going to push yourself through to the point where you feel your calf contracting, you feel your soleus even contracting a little bit. You feel your quad, your hamstring really engaging. You feel this glute on that backside engaging as well. And that's one of the principles that will be important, is that both sides of the hip even though, yes, I'm lunging on my left leg, this forward leg, I feel both sides of the hip loading up as I move down. Even before I start in the starting position, which is this knee slightly bent, this knee straight, even before I go down, I'm already feeling tension in both of my hips. If you don't feel tension in the top, you're not going to feel the right tension in the bottom. So you got to make sure you get that starting position down. That's going to be really crucial, because from there, all you need to do is just hold that same tension and just lunge as you normally would. I'm keeping this heel pushed forward. That's going to keep me on top of this leg, keep me pressuring this leg. And that's really going to create all this tension through my whole system. So that's the most important point. Well, the first point at least is keeping yourself pushed forward on that leg. That brings us to the second point, which is your torso angle. You don't want to be up tall like this. The reason why is because I'm not engaging my hip musculature whatsoever, maybe a little bit, if I'm just keeping my torso up like this. Another thing is that my back leg is taking a lot of the load. I want this to be a single leg, or at least like partially a single leg exercise. Now, of course, you're on 2 feet, but you want 80% of your weight on this leg. And in addition to that, you don't just, again, want your knee doing all the work, just pushing your knee forward like this. That's putting a lot of load, a lot of strain on your knee that you don't really need. Now, there's a time and a place for knees over toes squats or lunges, whatever. But really, if you learn how to do it with your hips engaged, you're going to get rid of a lot of the knee issues you have, simply because your hips are now going to be taking on the load better in any of the activities you do. Sure, you can strengthen around the knees, like go ahead by any means, but you're not going to get to the root of your issues if you never fix the function of your hips. That is what is key in knee health, is the feet, number one, and the hips as well, and how the feet and the hips interact. Because the knees don't need to be strong. The knees just need to be able to hinge. And then the feet and the hips are actually what absorb that load. And so if you can get your hips stronger, then you don't really need to do all of these knee exercises. And so that's, again, what we're practicing here. I'm pushing myself forward. I'm keeping my weight above this leg. So notice how my torso is almost in line with this back leg here. You don't need to be totally bent over forward like this. You could, if you want, test that out. But I like this angle right here. And I really like to make sure that I keep this angle all the way through. And notice how my knee, my shin angle does not really change as I'm going down. It stays consistent. It stays leaned over forward so that I'm engaging my hips the whole time. And then with this back leg, because I'm pushing myself forward the whole time, I'm really loading up this hip all the way through the motion. What I'll see a lot of people do sometimes is, as they come up, they'll lean back and their weight will go on this back leg and they'll take the load off of this front leg. If you keep your weight above this front leg the whole time, this torso leaned over like this, pushing yourself over forward of it, you're going to find that you get so much more glute engagement. My glute is on fire right now just from doing those. You'll find that you're able to really load that hip and get glute activation in a way that you never have before. Seriously, if you just get that one thing down, you might get rid of your knee pain, like literally in this one session. And the reason why is because pain always comes down to your body giving you the signal that you're doing something wrong, that mechanically something is off. So if you can get the right muscles to fire, to make sure that the whole body is integrated and operating, firing how it should, then you can get rid of pain in no time. And that's what a lot of my clients see. That's why I get the results that I do in a week's time, if that sometimes. It's because we just drill these things, exercises like this, and then slowly start loading them up, adding weight, maybe eventually adding some jumps, some more explosive variations. And they see that not only do they get their pain remediated, but they also get more athletic. So I'm going to stay on track here. I just got really excited about that because I just love seeing my clients just see quick results after years of not feeling like they were themselves, not feeling like they could progress, just kind of getting hopeless about it because they've seen all the PTs, they've seen all the doctors, and they just couldn't show them how to actually operate their body. So sorry, I just get worked up about that. But yeah, basically again, those are the first 2 points. It's really making sure that you're pushing yourself through that back leg, should really feel the lower legs and the hamstrings, the glutes engage, even this adductor on the inside. You almost want to kind of like feel that firing as well. You're gonna secondly make sure these two things go hand in hand, that this torso is nice and tall, or sorry, it's bent over forward, leaned over, sitting back at the hips, yet the chest and neck are nice and tall. You're extending at the T-spine here, not at your low back. The low back stays nice and neutral because my core is activated, my core is engaged. I'm not going to flare my rib cage. The rib cage is nice and packed down because my core is nice and strong. And then from there, I'm just pulling my sternum up as I keep the core engaged. And then that's going to be my position to lunge from. Now, the second or the third principle that I want to cover before we exit this video is the positioning of your hips. The first thing on this is that you want to, if anything, instead of opening up this way, which I see a lot of people doing, you want to make sure your belly button is either straight or even a little bit rotated towards this front leg. And the reason why, if you look at the anatomy of the glutes, how the fibers are going diagonally across your butt, you'll understand that it's internal rotation. This is external rotation at this leg. This is internally rotating on this leg. That internal rotation is key for fully stretching, fully loading those glute fibers. So what you'll find is that when you're closing off this hip just a tad, then you'll load your glute. And then at the same time, you keep everything straight. You keep head pointing straight. You keep the chest pointing straight. You're just slightly rotating in at the hips. It's a very slight movement. And you'll find that you're loading your hips, your glutes like crazy. Trust me, even if you do a variation where, I mean, you really exaggerate it and you keep everything straight except the hips, you'll find that this hip, and then you sit back into it as well. Instead of bringing the knee so far forward, you really sit your hips back. You do that and you find that this whole glute just gets loaded like crazy. Now, I recommend doing the version that we're doing right now, just keeping everything straight, keeping the hips straight, with just a very slight amount of that internal rotation. And then you could just experiment with that other more internally rotated variation later on. But in any case, you want to make sure your hips are level. So a lot of people, what I'll see, especially as they move down in the lunge, they'll start to have one leg just sag. And then what that'll do is it'll throw off the rib cage too. So the rib cage shifts this way as well. And it just becomes so awkward. Like, it's not really structurally sound. You want to make sure that the hips are not translating one way or the other. This is another thing that people do, is that they'll throw their hip outside. You want to make sure the hips are nice and centered. And that comes from being strong on this other leg. You almost want to feel like both legs, again, are working side to side almost equally. And that's going to keep me nice and straight. And I'm just going to feel like my hips are just nice and level. And then once I find that, you can use a mirror to help you. I really recommend feeling that position though. But once you feel that, you get that in place, this glute, this right glute is squeezing, this left glute is already loaded quite well. Then I'm gonna go down and keep that levelness all the way through. And again, it's gonna feel like both sides are working just as equally. So those are the 3 points, guys. It's number 1, pushing yourself forward from that back leg. Number 2, having that torso angle with the hips sat back, maintaining that torso angle as you come up and down, and then going hand in hand with that point 2A is to make sure that the shin doesn't move as well. As you go up and down, the shin stays in a fixed position. And then lastly, it's making sure that the hips are nice and level. Those things, although they seem so simple, they will make a huge difference in your lunge, I assure you. So go try that out. Take videos of yourself to go back and play it back, see if it looks like how I was executing it, and just get closer and closer to perfect every single day. Every time you train, you do this movement pattern, which I recommend doing quite frequently, because if you're an athlete, what are you doing? You're always on your feet. You're always lunging. Basically, every stride is a lunge in the air. So if you run in your sport, you need to be doing this quite often. So look at how your form is, because the form that you use in the gym is only going to show up in your sports, in your field of play. How you do it here is how you do it there. So perfect it here, and when you're in your sport, you won't have to think about it so much, and your body will just naturally be operating more efficiently. When your joints work the way they should, that means no pain, no recurring injuries, and then you'll also be performing better. So when you do those things, when you really follow the principles that I laid out for you, you're gonna find that your issues just melt away. So look at yourself on video, look at how you're performing these lunges, and if you want my help to actually understand even better than what I just showed you what proper form is, how to execute it, and more importantly, you want me to give you live feedback on your form and just be able to be with you to correct, make those adjustments so that eventually you can perfect it and just be the mover that your body is designed to, so you could perform how you were designed to without pain. If you want help with that, guys, just book a call down below. We'll chat it up. We'll see if it makes sense to work together. And if so, we'll get you rolling on an onboarding call. We'll assess you. I'll take a look at your posture, take a look at you doing some of these movements like the lunge, the RDL, some push-ups, just see where your mechanics are at a baseline. And then from there, I'll start coaching you up so that you can understand the main principles that are going to make you a better mover, make your body more aligned and connected, and ultimately help you perform the way that you want to. So if that sounds like something that you want to do, then book a call down below, and I'll see you on the other side.